The Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about Shōgun. We already talked about this a little bit in a On Tap segment where we kind of went over the first episode. But since then, we have watched the entire season, and we're going to talk about it in full spoilers. We also have our regular On the Horizon segment to talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. And we have an On Beat segment where we're going to be talking about 3 trailers that dropped this week. One fairly big one, a few other ones that we're going to mention as well, though. But let's get started with On the Horizon.
On the horizon. On the horizon.
On the Horizon is where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so, and we're going to be starting things off with The Veil, which is coming on Tuesday, April 30th to Hulu. This is a show that stars Elizabeth Moss, and it is a spy series from Peaky Blinders' Stephen Knight. So not Stephen S. DeKnight, but Stephen Knight.
Yeah. Love it when it gets
Stephen S.
confusing
DeKnight
like that.
did Daredevil and did the first season of Daredevil and did Spartacus.
Yeah, Spartacus.
Stephen Knight did Peaky Blinders and Taboo.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have The Veil coming from Stephen Knight and starring Elizabeth Moss, who was in Mad Men, and that's gonna be on Tuesday, April 30th on Hulu. Then we have Shardlake coming on Wednesday, May 1st to Hulu. We almost talked about this trailer last week, but we decided not to do a trailer segment because we just didn't have enough big trailers to talk about. And Shardlake is a mystery series that's set during the Tudors era. So it's I believe that's King Henry VIII kind of era of England.
Yeah.
But it's like a mystery series in that setting.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So that's kind of interesting. And that's on Wednesday, May 1st on Hulu. Then on Thursday, May 2nd, Hacks returns for its 3rd and final season on Max. The Tattooist of Auschwitz, a limited series, is also coming to Peacock on Thursday, May 2nd. Then on Friday, May 3rd, Unfrosted, the Pop-Tart story, is coming to Netflix. That is the movie directorial debut of Jerry Seinfeld, where he's going to star in it and direct it. And it's a comedy movie about the origin of Pop-Tarts, basically. I believe we talked about the trailer on this show. So yeah, that's another one. And then lastly, The Fall Guy is opening up on Friday, May 3rd in theaters. This is the new one starring Ryan Gosling as a stuntman who wants to win back the director of his movie, who is like his girlfriend or love interest, and all sorts of stuff happens. Looks like a kind of fun action movie.
Right.
But that is our On the Horizon segment. Now we're moving on to On Beat. On Beat. On Beat is our news segment. This week we're going to be talking about 3 trailers that came out this week. We're going to start things off with Trap, which seems to be associated in some way with M. Night Shyamalan. I'm not sure if he's...
No, it's M. Night Shyamalan's new film. He is directing it. Yeah.
Okay, he is directing it. 'Cause
Yes.
there's another movie that we cut from our trailer list that he's also associated with.
Well, yeah, he's the producer of that. The other movie was The Watchers, I think, and that is actually directed by his daughter.
Okay.
So that's his connection to that. But
Trap is the one that he's
Trap
doing.
is his movie, yes.
This is kind of an interesting premise because you see this father taking his daughter to a pop concert, and he's embarrassing her, but really kind of playing it up, and they're going to have this great time, and he seems to be so excited to be helping her, but there's all this stuff going on at the auditorium. There seems to be some police presence, some stuff going on. And so he goes and he asks one of the security people there, he's like, what's going on here? character. And it turns out that there's a serial killer, and they believe that he's supposed to be attending this concert or going to this concert, and so they're setting a trap for him. And then what we find out is that Josh Hartnett's character, the main character, the father, is the serial killer.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing we got in this trailer.
I saw like people say, oh yeah, why would they ruin the twist of the trailer? I'm like, man, if that was the twist of the movie, it would be in the trailer. That's information they want you to know up front.
Yeah,
like,
that's
probably
premise,
like
not the twist.
That's probably like very early in the movie, that scene. So, yeah.
It's the premise, not the twist.
Yeah, exactly. Which is fine. Like there is going to be a twist in there. Something like
it's Shyamalan, so yeah.
something like like Josh Hartnett's like freaking out the entire time about being caught, and like they're actually looking for somebody else who also happens to be a serial killer, as improbable as that is, or some kind of twist with.
Or he's been dead the whole time.
Yeah, everybody's ghosts. I was watching it, I was like, it's a decent premise for a movie, but like, it kind of fell apart at the scene where he's talking to like, to like the stadium employee who's telling him, because I'm thinking like, okay, so, because the dude's like, oh, I'm not supposed to be telling people this, but they're looking for a serial killer who's at the thing, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, if the cops have like got tip that this killer is attending this concert, and they're going through all the troubles surrounding it, blocking the exits and stuff, they clearly know who they're looking for, right? So that means they've got a description of the dude. And they would be coordinating with the people running the event, running the stadium. They would have at least handed out pictures of what this guy looks like and every employee there would have seen it. They would have had to. So like this random employee spilling all this to Josh Hartnett should have seen a description of him and realized this guy matches the description. If not an actual
he would either
photo.
have like some description or he wouldn't be read in at all to have information to give.
Right, yeah, exactly. So I'm like, this premise kind of falls apart right there.
There's probably a twist to it that we don't know
right,
about.
Yeah, there's probably a twist. Like I said, maybe Josh Hartnett isn't the actual guy they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a M. Night Shyamalan, so the twist is probably a bit bigger than that.
Right, yeah. I'm just spitballing. Yeah, it's probably something crazy. Like, they're all in hell.
Yeah, it's gonna be something more weird, I think, more esoteric.
Yeah.
Then we got a trailer for Atlas. And so I don't know what you think about this trailer. I have some very specific thoughts.
Let's go with your thoughts first, because, like, I don't really have specific thoughts, but go ahead.
So, I really, really like the aesthetic. I like the idea of these kind of, like, mech suits and this kind of futuristic world and the environment. And even though it looks a little bit on the cheap end, because it's like a Netflix movie and not like a feature film and stuff, I still really like the visual aesthetic of the movie. But I just can't get over J-Lo in the movie. Like, it's so miscast. It's so like every shot of her looks like it was like blue screened in like the worst, laziest way. Like, it just doesn't look right whenever she's on frame. It just looks wrong. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's just something about like how horribly miscast she is for this role. Like how much she does not fit this role. That it's like the entire time I'm watching it, I'm like, I really like this visual aesthetic. And every second she's on frame, I'm like completely taken out of the movie or out of the trailer.
I mean, this just looks like just a generic science fiction movie. It's the only thing that like made it like stand out.
Well, it's a mecha. We don't get that many mecha movies.
I mean, I don't care. I don't care.
It's just the J-Lo of it all that takes me out of it so much.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird movie for her.
Yeah, there's like a scene where like it's supposed to be she's in like this mech suit and the mech suit's like running and it shows like from the inside view and she's like clearly like J-Lo's like faking running in place or something and it just looked like so fake. It looked like a Saturday Night Live sketch. I was like, oh god, like this just does not work. She's not the right person for this role. It looks like they filmed during quarantine and just fucking like filmed her at her house or something and just like put a green tablecloth behind her and just said, well, that'll be okay. I mean, it's just nothing about her in the movie works at all. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. It just, it's like, cause they'll show like a clip of like Simu Liu's character, like, you know, and I'm like, yeah, this is looking good. And then they show some of the other people. It's like, yeah, it's looking good. They show some of the external shots of the mech kind of running and other things. I'm like, yeah, that's good. And then they cut to her, and every time they cut to her, it's like, ooh, I'm just completely taken out of it.
It just, I mean, it just, I don't know, it just didn't look that interesting to me.
Well, it's a straight to Netflix movie, so there's like no investment.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But I don't know, man. It just took me so out of it. But I don't know. I'll have to see some more of it, see if it's something that I'd be able to watch. But I mentioned to you before, I think last week we were talking about something, and I talked about how I had went to see this Tom Cruise movie, Edge of Tomorrow. Fantastic movie. But like, I was saying that I was worried going into it that I wouldn't be able to separate the crazy couch jumping Scientologist Tom Cruise from the character he's playing in the movie. And I wouldn't be able to enjoy the movie because it would just be too distracting. Because that's how Tom Cruise is for me a lot of times. Like, I have trouble watching Tom Cruise movies, even though he's a good actor and everything, but just because it's like, it's hard for me not to see Tom Cruise when I see him. Like, I can't see his character, I see him. And the way I think of Tom Cruise as being such a weirdo and stuff that like, it makes it hard for me to like pay attention to the movie. And I was worried about that when I went to see Edge of Tomorrow and ended up it not being an issue at all. Like I just completely suspended my disbelief, got into it, was able to thoroughly enjoy the movie and had no problem with it. This looks like what I was worried the Tom Cruise movie would be like. This looks like what I was worried that experience would be just from the trailer. Like it's like, and it's not because J-Lo is particularly like a really weird person that takes me out of the movie. It's just, she's, like I said, she's so miscast. Mm-hmm. It so does not fit. Like, it just feels like they wanted to make this movie and somebody at the studio said, well, we should put J-Lo in it. And the director's like, why? Like, no, we need this person. They're like, no, J-Lo's a bigger name. Put J-Lo in it. And it just seems like one of those studio compromise kind of things. I don't know. I could be just reading into it completely incorrectly, but. And then the last trailer we got, the one that's actually like super notable, was Deadpool and Wolverine. We got our second trailer for it. Our first trailer was very short, just kind of gave us the base premise. Didn't really do much to show us, much of Wolverine besides like a shadow and like his suit from behind. Not really much else. But then this trailer, we got the real focus on the Deadpool and Wolverine team up. We got a bunch of jokes put in there. We got a bunch of, a really good joke at the very end. We got, a lot of Easter eggs, fun Easter eggs of different types, MCU related and X-Men universe related. And then we just got more of the dynamic between Logan and Wade, Wolverine and Deadpool. We got more of kind of their dynamic. So what did you think of this new trailer for Deadpool and Wolverine?
I love it. It's fantastic. It's everything I imagined a Deadpool and Wolverine movie would be.
Everything down to the joke about Feige not wanting cocaine references at the end.
Yeah.
That was funny. You pointed out the Liefeld only feet, shoe store in the background of a shot, which is a great, meta joke for comic book fans that know who Rob Liefeld is. And
by the way, for people who don't know who Rob Liefeld is an artist who's worked in comics since
either created or popularized Deadpool.
He created Deadpool.
Okay.
He was the creator of Deadpool and Cable and a couple other characters, X-Men characters in the 90s.
He has a notoriously weird art style.
Where
the characters have these gigantic puffed up chests, and he just never draws feet, apparently.
He just avoids drawing feet. That's the running gag with him is every time he has a character their feet are obscured by something, like there's a rock there, or they're standing in mist, or any excuse to not have to show a drawn foot. That's where
he's the anti-Tarantino.
Yes. So that's where the whole thing came from, that Rob Liefeld can't draw feet.
Yeah. So there's got a little reference to that in there. There's a shot where you see a giant Ant-Man costume, and then the hood opens up and you see a skull inside it.
Costume. It is an Ant-Man costume. It's a dead Ant-Man or dead giant.
Because you see his helmet open up and there's a skull inside. So it's Ant-Man became Giant Man and died.
Yes. And that's presumed to be from the Old Man Logan timeline, where Logan or Wolverine is like is like one of the only people left alive in the Marvel universe, and that's kind of backed up by like some of the dialogue in the trailer, where they say like this Wolverine failed his world.
Mm-hmm. We also got in the first trailer, we got the reveal that the TVA was involved in everything that's going on in this movie.
Yeah.
And in this one, we got the actual antagonist, or who seems to be the actual antagonist of the movie.
Yep.
Professor X's, like, long-lost twin who he murdered in the womb or something.
Want to give her actual name here. Cassandra Nova.
Yeah. That's Professor X's, like, twin who he killed in the womb or something in the comics, I guess.
Yeah. Or, like, well, like, he attempted to kill in the womb because she survived.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. That is a whole thing.
She's got a litany of powers, including all of Professor X's powers, and then some other ones beyond that as well, apparently, so.
She can manipulate the DNA of others. She can jumpstart people's latent mutations and just activate them. She can phase through solid matter. She has regeneration and a healing factor.
And she's got Professor X's psychic powers and stuff.
She has telepathy and all the and telekinesis and all those things.
She's just one of those characters that they created that they just said, let's just give her everything.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
But yeah, so that's, we got our look at that antagonist for the movie, some cool shots. There's some really cool, creative fight scenes that tie into the fact that our main two characters that are gonna be fighting each other and are in these scenes have regenerative powers. And so they can fight in this really dirty, brutal way because we know the characters are gonna be fine because they'll regenerate.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a cool shot where Wolverine is just stabbing the shit out of Deadpool, and Deadpool's shooting him in the sides of his body and stuff. And it's just brutal. It looks good. I think, Wolverine stabs Deadpool in the crotch or something in one shot.
Yes.
Or is just about to. There's a cool shot when Deadpool finds Wolverine in a bar and he pulls a gun on him and the gun says, smile and wait for the flash or something like that.
Yeah, I love that.
So it just has all the cool stuff you expect from, a Deadpool trailer. It looks great. Did you notice that they had that they jumped into the Endgame style or Doctor Strange style portal, but that the portal was blocked out so you couldn't see what was on the other side, they censored it in the trailer?
Yeah, I saw that.
So that's
just
trailer
censorship.
Marvel's done that a few times with MCU movies where they've literally changed the footage so you can't tell there's something that they're hiding.
Right.
And here they block out the portal so you can't see what's on the other side, which is something that the portals you can see what's on the other side. So they're blocking it out so that you can't tell exactly where they're going, because that's a spoiler. So we'll have to see where they end up going with that. Probably somewhere funny.
Yeah.
Let's fucking go. But that is it for our trailer section. And now we're going to move on to full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, we are going to be talking about Shōgun. As I mentioned, we already talked about the series just the first episode when it came out. We talked about kind of our general impressions of it, some of the historical changes and what things were based on. We talked about a bunch of that stuff, as well as just what we liked about the way the series was being done, certain things. I know we talked a lot about the language barrier and how that played into the series and stuff.
Yeah.
Now we've seen the entire series. This is it. So if they decide to make more, it's not Shōgun.
They are not doing more Shōgun.
Well, the thing is that
they could adapt other James Clavell novels.
James Clavell's done 3 about Japan. They call it the Japan trilogy. So
no, it's the Asia books, and they're not all about Japan. There's one about Hong Kong, some about other places in Asia. It's not just Japan.
I was pretty sure that they were focused on Japan. They might take place in other places as well. I think there's one about World War II, which I believe James Clavell was in. That's how he became obsessed with Japan, is because he was
there's
in an internment camp.
So the books are Shōgun, obviously, Taipan, which is definitely not Japan. King Rat.
But I think it's about Japan's involvement in Japan.
Could be. I don't know much about these. There's King Rat, there's Gaijin, Noble House, and Whirlwind are apparently the book. I think Whirlwind, judging by the cover here, because it shows like a helicopter, is probably the one. Oh no, okay. Oh, that one's about the Iran hostage crisis. Never mind.
But yeah, so James Clavell's written some other books about Asia and Japan and stuff, so they might go back for that. This is also based on historical true stories. Things happen. Most of the characters in the show are based on actual figures, historical figures, including the ones you wouldn't necessarily think. Like, some people might think like, oh, they added in this John Blackthorne character so they could have like a white character for us to identify with or something. But he's actually based on a real figure too.
He's based on a real figure, yeah. And also like the central conceit of Shōgun was like, the conceit was like introducing like a Western audience to like this world through a lens like they can relate to. Like, he is based on William Adams, but he's also a character that's like meant to be the reader's like POV, like who the reader can like attach to or sympathize with while, you know, like getting introduced to like, you know, this strange world of like Japanese historical fiction. So
Yeah.
it kind of works in that sense.
Clavell's like widely regarded for really introducing the West to Japan.
Yes.
Like a lot of the kind of stuff that's happened with Japanese culture invading the United States and stuff like that has been like after James Clavell. Like Japan was still kind of seen as like this kind of exotic, unknown kind of place to the West.
So yeah, the books, I have like a short summary of the novels too. So King Rat is set in a Japanese POW camp in Singapore in 1945.
That's like the closest to autobiographical, I believe. That's,
yes, because
James Clavell was in a POW camp.
Yes. It's remarkable that he was a Japanese, you know, POW, and he came out of the experience just having an appreciation for their culture and wanting to learn more about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. But yeah, Taipan is set in Hong Kong in 1841. Noble House is also set in Hong Kong, this time in 1963. Whirlwind is set in Iran, 1979. And Gaijin is the second novel set in Japan, which is set in Japan in 1862.
Okay. I believe, 1862 is 6 years before the end of the Tokugawa shogunate.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's heavily about what that book's about, is about the Tokugawa shogunate falling apart. Which,
yeah, I would guess.
Which this Shogun is about basically the creation of the Tokugawa shogunate.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's a fictional telling of the creation of the Tokugawa shogunate. Obviously, like, the characters in Shōgun are based on real historical people. We already brought up William Adams, John Blackthorne, but for the novel and the show, the names are changed. They're fictionalized versions of these people.
Yeah,
so,
to give them more, like, creative leniency.
Yes.
So the character of Toranaga, played by Hiroyuki Sanada, who's kind of the key figure of the series, is based on Tokugawa Ieyasu. So Tokugawa Ieyasu is the guy who started the Tokugawa shogunate. He took over Japan, basically.
Yes.
So that's like what this whole series is about. Everything kind of builds up and leads to. They mention often the city of Edo being like being Toranaga's like base of operations in Edo. That isn't a name change for the book, but it is a name change because Edo later becomes known as Tokyo. But it actually was called Edo in the 1600s. That's like what that territory was referred to as. It didn't get the name Tokyo until much later.
Let's get into like actually discussing this show because I feel like we're getting lost in the weeds here. One word, amazing. This is the show of the year for me.
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard to top.
So far, this is the best show I've seen this year.
Yeah.
By quite a bit. Not even by a little bit. By quite a bit. There's other stuff I've watched that I've enjoyed, but this has been just stellar from beginning to end. Just really smart, like in the way things are handled. Jesus, like, the machinations that are going on are just so deep and so built into like the politics of that region and that time And it like forces you to basically get somewhat of an education in it, to understand what's going on. And it's so good. It's so like detailed and so just smartly written. And like we mentioned before how smart it was the way they were playing with the idea of language in the first episode. And you're just getting more and more of not just the language barrier, but other things as well, because the language barrier starts to slip as the show goes on and as the character of John Blackthorne is learning Japanese.
Yeah.
So that becomes like less and less of a concern as the series goes on, but it still remains like something in place where like he doesn't quite understand, the culture. And we talked about in the first episode, there was this shot where they were arriving in Osaka and, the guy with him was saying like, you thought you were like the cradle of civilization and that civilization didn't exist here or something, but look at this city. Who do you think lives here or something,
Right. Yeah.
And that was like such a smart moment of playing with like his cultural ignorance and stuff and going into that element. And that's kind of what this show does, is it kind of like treats us in that lens. Like we're seeing things through his lens, and these characters are talking to us and educating us on what Japan was like, what feudal Japan was like, and kind of giving us a whole rundown of that. And it just continues beyond that. The language is just the beginning.
Oh, for sure.
It's so smart. They talked about in the first episode, I don't think we mentioned it, but they talked about the whole thing of like a man having 3 hearts. And it's like that the heart that he keeps only to himself, the heart that he shares with his closest friends, and the heart that he displays outwardly. And that just is such a huge theme of the show, where like characters are doing things and you're kind of like, it kind of shakes you a little bit as to like why characters are doing things a certain way or why they're acting in a certain way. And it's because you get to kind of know some of these characters on like 3 levels. Like you get to know them as they outwardly express themselves, but you also get to know them as they would share themselves with their closest people, but also you get to see a little bit of a peek, not with everybody, but with some of them, you get to see a little bit of peek into their actual heart and like what they're actually like. And so sometimes the character will make a decision that just seems like almost out of character or a little off or something. And then like it starts to play out and you realize, oh no, okay, what we've been seeing before is this character being guarded about something. And what this decision is then being a little bit less guarded about something. And
right.
So we're not seeing something out of character, we're seeing something more truly in character. This makes the character of Toranaga, again, the stand-in for Tokugawa, particularly crazy. Because, like, nobody knows what's going on in that guy's head. Right. He's the guy playing chess while everybody else is playing Hungry Hungry Hippos.
Oh yeah. He's playing 4D chess. He's a master machinator, a master schemer. And you see that right to the end. And man, and he is a stone cold bastard. He is an absolute bastard who only cares about securing power for himself and the means to do it. And the thing is, he is the best at playing the game.
Yeah, at the same time, as much as you could say that, he doesn't want to secure power for himself out of selfish desire so much as he does because he knows that the only way to bring peace to Japan is through somebody like him doing that.
I don't believe that. I believe that is something he says or that he tells himself maybe as a justification, but like he definitely is, and he admits this to Yabushige in the last episode.
No, Yabushige makes an assumption. He doesn't admit that. Yabushige makes the assumption. He says, so what you've wanted in your heart all along is the shogunate. You're no different than us in your secret heart. He doesn't confirm that. He doesn't deny that. In fact, he kind of shows up Yabushige at that point because Yabushige is like, just tell me, I'm going to take it to my grave. And he repeats the line that Yabushige said to his heir in the first episode about that Toranaga was not around for, about like what's the point of sharing plans with a dead man.
Right.
And it's showing like how far ahead he was in that, but it's also like using some historical context as well. I don't see Toranaga as a bastard completely. I see him as like,
oh, he is 100%. He is 100%.
He does what needs to be done. But he's still doing things like he still freed that one widow after she served. He still kept his promise to her. he had Mariko do what she was going to do, but she was doing it on her own accord as well. She wanted that, you know?
She wanted to die, but he manipulated it.
He manipulated the curse of it, but she knew that. He wasn't like keeping that as he didn't trick her into hurting herself.
No, it's not trick her into hurting herself. It's giving her like the nudge or like the reason to do it. Like, you know, like this will help our cause. This will give you an honorable death or whatever, which is what she wanted. She wanted to die, you know, she wanted her life to have meaning, you know, and she thought like, you know, dying for a noble cause, you know, like to advance a noble cause would give her life meaning. You know, that's why she was so willing to do that. The thing is, like, my stance there is if Toranaga was like actually good, actually cared about the well-being of those around him, or actually cared, you know, like actually had some care besides his own lust for power, he would have found a different way without easily, but he,
I don't think there was any different way.
He knew she wanted that, and he used that as a tool to advance his goals. So to me, that's bad.
I disagree. I don't think there was evil. Any other way. I think he knew that was the only way. I think
there was. I think he could have found another way. I think he used her and her willingness to die as a tool to advance his goals. I don't think Toranaga is a good person at the end of the day. I think he's an evil man, even if he is like one, you know, the main figure of the story. That doesn't mean like the whole point justified.
I think the whole point is I think he is, but I think the whole point
even if he's like against other bastards, like Ishido's not justified either. Ishido's not a good person. But nobody in this is really a good person except for Mariko or like the other like women. Let's be honest.
What I'm trying to say is that he is doing what he's doing specifically because it goes back to the three hearts thing that they talked about, like having the three different hearts. He's stoning himself or icing it, making himself ice to do what needs to be done for his plan to work. So like you look at it and go like, but he could have done something else. It's like, I don't think he could have. Like I think he knew exactly how the politics of the situation were going to work.
But his plan is entirely self-serving. It's for him to be Shōgun.
Yeah, but it's not like, in my opinion at least, it's not for him like because he lusts for power.
I believe, he does. I don't think he does at the end of the day. He lusts for power. I think that's what he wants. He wants to usurp power for himself and take control. And like all of his protesting that he doesn't wish to be Shōgun is just showboating. That's just a presentation for others. I think in his secret heart, he truly does want to be Shōgun, and he's doing everything he can to make that happen. And I think Ishido, for as bad as he is, I think he's right that he understood Toranaga's true intentions the entire time.
He was seeking for power, you know?
Well, yeah, he did. I mean, that is why, yeah, but of course. But I think that's also why he could see it so clearly, is because his goals were the same.
I don't think so at all. Like, I think Toranaga's goal was a unified Japan without war. And that he thought, whether he's correct or wrong in this assumption, that he was the only path towards that. Now, that could make him narcissistic. That could make him anything else. But I think his goal wasn't a lust for power, it was a use of power. It was that he knew he had to be in the position of power to do what had to be done. Mm-hmm. And he did everything to do that, including using people like pawns, because he had to in order to get his plan to come to fruition, to work. Well, for his plan to work, he had to do it. He had to do what he did. And I think that's the whole point, is that he wasn't, like, my argument is that
if you do evil things to achieve peace, does that still make you good?
Yes. Because
I mean that is a very
heavy
philosophical question.
Because it's your intention. Is his intention power for the sake of power, or is his intention power for the sake of peace? And if his intention is power for the sake of peace, to like put an end to the Warring States era, which, by the way, the feudal era of Japan had been going on for ages.
Oh yes.
And it was almost put to an end by Nobunaga Oda, and then like that was all screwed up with an assassination, and then the power kept shifting and all sorts of shit was going down, and all the machinations kept continuing on. Toranaga, or, you know, his contemporary, I guess, or his who he's paralleling, Tokugawa, like that empire ran for over 200 years. and was like an age of prosperity for Japan without civil war, which is something Japan was in a constant state of before that. And that only came to an end with the Meiji Restoration, which is basically the era that Japan is still in, is the modernized Japan. Like that started with the end of the Tokugawa shogunate. So it's like, there's only really been one era after the Tokugawa shogunate, and this starting all the way back in 1600, you know? So like when you say, if you're doing something evil, but you're doing for good intentions, does that make what you're doing good? Well, yeah, I think so, because he isn't doing it for those. It's not like peace was a side benefit. I think peace was his intention.
Well, I mean, obviously he's not going to campaign on a platform of, there will definitely be more war and suffering after I'm Shogun. He wouldn't even, like, tell himself that. I think, like, he does believe that he can restore peace and that he's the man to do it. I think, like, if you are going to seek power, you know, like, you have to have, like, some narcissistic belief in yourself that you're the best person to hold power for whatever reason. And I think, like, that's his reasoning, that's his justification.
I see that's the difference is in where we're seeing things is that you're seeing it as his justification to do what he wants for power. And I'm seeing power is what he's, you know, what he's doing, all the bad things he's doing to secure power is all towards the end of peace.
Right.
Like, it's the argument isn't, did he do these bad things or not? It's more, was his intention to benefit himself or to benefit Japan as a whole?
And again, I think it's a credit to the writing and credit to how complex the characters are, that we can have this kind of disagreement in perspective about the character, because, like, what makes this show so rich and so rewarding is that it's not black and white. It's not telling you outwardly, you know, like, what is, you know, like, the show isn't like outwardly telling you, oh, Toranaga is a white hat. You gotta, like, watch the show, look at his actions, and come draw your own conclusions from that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a credit to how beautifully written this is.
It's kind of the case with all the characters. We talked about after the first episode
absolutely.
with Yabushige being just like a fascinating character to watch. The entire time through the series, he's double dealing.
Yes, he
but
is.
It's not like he's only concerned about himself. He has a complete breakdown in the final episode after what happened in the episode before.
Well, right, because Mariko's death was not part of the plan as far as he knew. He was Toranaga, like, that was part of the plan for Toranaga's end, right? But, like, Yabushige was not, like, expecting that, because when Yabushige let the shinobi into the castle on orders from Ishido, or at least Ishido, like, must have told him that, you know, they were just going to capture Mariko and, you know, not harm her. And so when she dies in the middle of the siege, like, that's unexpected for him. And I believe, like, he did genuinely care, and that causes a breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Yabushige is fundamentally an evil man. I mean, he is a bastard. He boils a man alive in the first episode. You know, like he's not a nice guy. He is a backstabber and a schemer, you know, but, like, I think it's more like he's just trying to survive in this world, you know, and he's trying to create a future for himself and his nephew.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from his perspective, he's just doing what he has to do to get by and to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing, is that all these characters, another character that we initially have, I believe would have, as an audience, have a strong dislike for is Bantaru, who is Mariko's husband. He's just comes across like such an asshole, but you start to get more of the complexities of his character and kind of the fact that, you know, his wedding to Mariko, like, he didn't force Mariko into a wedding, they were forced into a wedding together.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's been cold to him the entire time, and it's something that he's struggled with. And there was a great part in, I believe it's either the second to last or the one before that, where he does this whole nice thing where he's like preparing tea for her and is doing the whole tea ceremony for her. And he's saying, all, hey, I'm finally going to cave in and I'm going to let you kill yourself, and we can kill ourselves together as our protest to everything that's going on. And then we can die as husband and wife. I've finally come to this realization. Isn't that great? And she's like, you don't understand at all. You still don't understand understand me. Like, you still don't get it. And then she leaves, and she leaves with some pretty biting words. And he, like, literally breaks down. Like, it cuts to him and he's alone. And you see this is a character who's emotional, who, like, we always saw him as just being kind of arrogant and angry and stuff. But you see, like, the other side of his emotion that he has to hide. And he doesn't let it even go until she's out of the room. You know, it's not like he breaks down in front of her. Like, she leaves the room, and the second, like, she's out of the room, he starts to break down.
Right.
And it kind of gives you more of a sense of his character. And then, like, in the finale, there's a moment of kind of, like, almost begrudging respect shown between him and Blackthorn.
Yeah.
And this is, like, what makes all of these characters complex. Even the characters that initially come off almost like a bit mustache twirling. I think they introduced the mother of the heir, Ochiba no Kata. They kind of introduced her as almost a bit mustache twirling.
Yeah.
When she came in,
she's just a woman. She's just a woman doing what she can to ensure the safety of her child.
Yeah.
That's really what she's doing. And part of her alliance with Ishido is, like, there's a bad blood with Toranaga, but she also, like, sees Toranaga as a threat to her child because Toranaga wants to be Shōgun and will absolutely dispose of the heir, you know, because that's just gonna get in the way of his, you know, like, the heir is the person with legitimate claim to the rule of Japan, not Toranaga, you know, and so she sides with Ishido because she believes that her son will be better protected if Ishido succeeds.
Yeah,
and it's all like,
unless she marries Ishido and, like, he names that son as his heir, that kid's just in as much danger with Ishido.
Yeah.
Because Ishido would obviously kill anybody too, you know?
Yeah.
That's like all these characters. I like
and so that's her character. It's like, yeah, she's a schemer and everything, but she is really just doing it out of, like, her sense of motherhood, you know. And then,
it goes back to the Three Hearts thing. She's got these different sides of her. We know that deep down she's got this kind of, like, honor and this kind of aspect of, like, a care. Like, she has an aspect where she cares for Mariko, but then there's another aspect of her that just, like, wants to destroy Mariko because Mariko's father killed her father.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's got this animosity towards her, but when Mariko dies, that's enough to convince her to switch allegiances.
Yes, which was the point of Toranaga, you know, ensuring that Mariko died, was because that was the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, everything Toranaga plots, you know, like, his plan is executed to perfection throughout this. And also, like, there's John Blackthorn. Like, John Blackthorn is not, and he's one of the main protagonists here, but he's also not innocent when he's
a pirate.
Yeah, he's a pirate. Yeah, from the very beginning, you know. He came to Japan to plunder and exploit it in any way that he could. You know, he admits this at the end of Toranaga when he said, you know, I came here to use you, you know. Of course, Toranaga doesn't care about that, like, because Toranaga was using Blackthorn himself the entire time.
Oh, and
it's
not like
funny
he was
because he wasn't unaware. It's funny because, like, there's the scene where, like, the priests, you know, they give Toranaga the journal or whatever that, like, had proof of John Blackthorn's piracy, you know, expecting, you know, and they were expecting Toranaga to, you know, like, to hand Blackthorn over to them so that they could, you know, execute him for crimes, you know, for crimes of piracy and all other things. And Toranaga just says, oh yeah, we'll translate that later. Don't worry, because Toranaga does not give a shit because Toranaga has a use for Blackthorn in his plans. You know, like, Toranaga the entire time did not care.
Another thing that plays into Toranaga's motivations is that there is a moment of genuine surprise, I believe, when Blackthorn is drawing the map for Toranaga. And he says, like, everything beyond this line, the Portuguese claim as their own, and they can install whoever they want and stuff like that. And there's a moment of, like, the idea of ownership, and they take a big, you know, they follow that word. I believe the word they said is belongs.
Yeah.
And there's, like, a kind of moment of genuine shock of Toranaga being kind of seeing an outside perspective and seeing, like, how much at risk Japan is to being completely taken over by the West. And I think that that's part of what motivates him as well to go as far as he does.
Well, there's another thing, and there's another thing, it's the last episode. There's another thing that, like, shows, like, how much of a bastard Toranaga is. when Blackthorn's ship is burned, and Toranaga says, "Oh, there's traitors in the village," and he's ransacking the village and he's punishing all the villagers looking for the traitor, when it was Toranaga who had the ship burned on his orders to prevent John from leaving. John confronts Toranaga about, his treatment of the villagers, outrage to the point where he's going to commit seppuku if Toranaga doesn't back off. And Toranaga stops him because, and the funny thing is, the Toranaga-Blackthorn relationship is, Toranaga, he still needs Blackthorn because, even, at the end, when Toranaga's talking to Yabushige, he says, Blackthorn's gonna, just build in our ship, and then he says, I'll have to burn that one down too, saying, Toranaga's not gonna let Blackthorn leave Japan, ever.
What he says is he'd probably have to burn that down again, which the idea, to me, means that he's not saying he's never gonna let Blackthorn leave Japan, he's saying he doesn't think he'll be able to let Blackthorn leave Japan, that he's going to need him as a piece. So it's not so much that he's no, I will never let him go. It's more that he's saying, I can't let him go.
Right.
I need him.
Right. But I don't think Blackthorn wants to leave either. Blackthorn's character arc is interesting because when we start the show, he is very much just there to enrich himself. He is very much there to just do whatever he can, take whatever he can to enrich himself and get out of Japan. And then he forms this relationship with Mariko that completely changes him, to his core, to the point that, on the other side of it, after Mariko dies, he is a completely changed man. He has no interest in what he came there for, and he only has interest at that point in just living his life in that village. At the end of the show, he doesn't want to leave Japan. He wants to leave. He comes to see that fishing village as his home, and the people as his neighbors, to a point he is a completely changed man by the end of the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting, character journey for him.
As they said in Dune, he's gone native.
Yeah, he's gone native. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting because the last episode opens with what we see, what appears to be the future, where John is old and dying, and back in England.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that a few times. And it's kind of the first impression you get is is this framed from this is him remembering his past? And it's not. It's John having a dream of a potential future. And
that's left to interpretation.
Nope, it is not. That is the case. And you can tell it's the case too. There's a very, very strong clue because in those flash forwards,
you're talking about the rosary in his hand.
Yes.
Yeah,
he drops that in the sea.
But that doesn't mean that that's not him in the future. That just means that that's not that rosary.
Why do you think that's the future? Why do you think that's the set future?
I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it's implied that it might not be.
Right.
I'm saying that it isn't certain.
Right. It's a possible future that John sees through visions that he rejects. And the point of that the entire time is that is a future that John rejects, and that's not going to be his future at the end of the show. When he chooses to stay in that village, he is choosing anything but that future.
That's an interpretation.
Well, that's the showrunner's interpretation, so you'll have to take it up with showrunner.
I will. No, I'm just saying that, it's left in a very specific way to be kind of vague and read into.
Right. A lot of things in the show are.
Yeah.
Left to be vague and read into. To me, that's what I read into it. And then, I read an interview about the last episode with showrunner, and he basically confirmed that's what it is. That's a possible future that John's dream, because the name of the episode is Dream Within a Dream. And he said that dream, that's John's dream. That's a dream within a dream that the title is referring to.
I disagree with it on historical basis by what they're basing these characters on and kind of the way it's intentionally vague.
Right. But again, the historical basis, again, these are fictionalized versions of real characters, so these are fictional characters, so their stories are going to differ at the end of the day.
It's also left intentionally vague.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. That's okay. What I'm saying, and I'm sticking to it.
It's fine because, there is validity to a viewer of a piece of art having their own interpretation, even interpretations that the artist did not intend, that is totally valid. Like, your interpretation is just as valid.
Well, see, there's a few things going on here. So first off, you have the original history that this is based on. Then you have the original novel's story and where that goes with it, which is a little different. They made changes. And then you have the choices made by two separate showrunners. It's like a husband-wife team and their own interpretations of it. And then you have the influence of Sanada, who made several changes that he believed were more accurate to the Japanese history, or to better representing Japan throughout the thing. So you have like a lot of different a big cross section of different interpretations of many different things throughout the entire run of the series.
Although if we are talking about history, and we are talking about William Adams, Adams did die in Japan.
Yeah, but he, I believe, traveled back and forth.
Oh yeah, because he established trade with between Japan and the Dutch.
So he wasn't held in place in England.
And nothing there suggests like that John Blackthorne wasn't allowed the same, you know.
Well, Toranaga saying that he was going to destroy the boat again.
Yeah.
To keep him there implied that. So there is something that suggests that. Like everything
my
in the
point
series,
is like the visions portray Blackthorne dying in England when like it's very clear that he lives out like the rest of his days, like, you know, he makes his residence in Japan. He dies in Japan is what is implied by the end.
Everything's implied, man. That's what I'm trying to say, is that there's a lot of things that are intentionally vague, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly. Because again, like, they're not going to, like, spell things out for people here. Like, again, this is a beautifully written character drama. It's not like somebody's gonna, like, come in and say, oh, it's a good thing you've decided that you were going to live here forever and die here, and, like, you know, it's so good that you decided this, for sure. 100%.
But it goes beyond that, though, is what I'm trying to say, is that there is an intention here to make it not overt. And I'm not saying that just like they're not going to spell everything out to you. I mean, there's an intention of reading into it with your own interpretation.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I guess one other thing I could point out about Shōgun as it relates to history, and to end this off with, is that everything in this series felt like a build-up to a big battle, a big inevitable battle. And they kind of didn't present that battle in this.
Well, the book
was
doesn't
less
either.
important. It was less important because it's about the machinations.
Yeah,
it's about the political intrigue. It's not about the battle itself.
Yeah, exactly. It's about the political intrigue and the machinations that lead up to the battle. The only thing, like, they want you to know that's important is that Toranaga's plan succeeds. You know, he does win the battle and become Shogun. I kind of say this in exposition, you know, for the expediency, but, like, that's the takeaway that you're supposed to take away, is like, yes, all of his machinations succeeded. He does become Shogun. He wins the battle. You don't have to see the battle happen.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that the battle in reference is the Battle of Sekigahara, which is probably the most famous battle and war in all of Japanese history. It's something that if you follow anything in Japanese history, you're going to hear about a ton. There were tons of very prominent figures. Some of them in the show are represented by fictional characters based on people that existed, but other people that you don't even see in there at all. Like, the most famous samurai of all time is Miyamoto Musashi.
Yeah.
And he was rumored to have taken part in that battle for the Western forces. So he would have been fighting for Ishida. And if you read the book Musashi or watch I, Samurai, which is about Musashi, the movie or the book, either one, begins at the Battle of Sekigahara with Miyamoto Musashi before he even took that name, because that was like a name he took on. He had a different name before that. Like, basically hiding from the groups that were going around killing the stragglers, the survivors of the Battle of Sekigahara.
Right, yeah.
And they were like, you know, what would be Toranaga's side or Tokugawa's side was like basically wiping out the other people that had survived the war on the other side.
Right,
to quell rebellions before they would happen. And Miyamoto Musashi is rumored to have been one of the people he missed. So that's disputed in history. Like, people aren't sure. He would have been 16 when the battle happened, which sounds young, but historically that makes sense. There are a lot of people 14, 16 fighting in wars. We saw in a flashback scene that Toranaga himself like went into his first battle and won his first battle when I think they said he was 14 or something, or 12, something like that.
Yeah. He was like really young.
Yeah.
And I believe at that time, in the scene, they said he was like the youngest person to like have won a battle. You know?
And again, it goes into the stories playing with the idea of stories versus reality.
Right.
The whole thing about him cutting off, like acting as second to the enemy general when he committed seppuku was that, you know, that the stories are that he, with one strike, cut off his head as the young warlord, you know, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And the fantasy and there's a scene like where
Toranaga's talking to his general.
He's talking to his brother. Like, his brother is there because he's trying to forge an alliance, which, you know, that doesn't go well. That's, you know, like, it turns out to be a trick, but they're like, you know, they're all like, you know, drinking and talking, you know, like, casually, and Toranaga's brother is talking about, like, his past, you know, talking about Toranaga, and he brings that up, and he says, oh no, like, he had to, like, hack at that head, you know, to get it to come off.
Well, no, Toranaga's brother doesn't say that. He makes
somebody
a
in Ruin does. Yeah.
No, not at that time. He makes reference to Toranaga's brother makes reference to stories not necessarily being the truth, and he plants that seed. And then later on, Toranaga's talking to his top general Hiramatsu, the guy who ended up killing himself in protest to Toranaga's actions, but also as a way of like solidifying Toranaga's base. Like, it was all part of the plan, basically, for him to do that. But the two of them are talking, and Hiramatsu tells Toranaga asks Hiramatsu, like, why didn't you say anything about, you know, like, what really happened? And he said, what, that it took you 9 hacks to get the guy's head off? And that's like them having a moment. That's Toranaga's second heart, the one he shares with the people close to him.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, fantastic show. Definitely watch it again. I hope they do, like, more James Clavell adaptations. I'd love to see, like, some of the other stuff.
I just like to see more stuff set in ancient Japan.
Right.
Whether it's based on that or not, you know, like.
Yeah, as long as it's this high quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's this high quality, then yes.
Like, I wouldn't mind seeing, there's apparently a movie that came out in 2017 called Sekigahara that's about the Battle of Sekigahara. And it's framed in kind of different perspective. It's framed as like, Ashido is kind of a tragic hero.
Right.
Or not really Ashido, Ashida is who he's based on. As a tragic hero. And Tokugawa Ieyasu is like kind of a villain who ends up taking power.
And you can certainly frame things like that.
It's not the common way that works about Sekigahara are framed. It's usually framed with Ashida as the villain.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's the old adage, right? History is written by the victors. So the victors are the ones who are celebrated.
Yeah. The film, that came out in 2017, and apparently that is the first time that they actually, like, really portrayed the Battle of Sekigahara on film. Like, before that, they've just had, like, kind of brief scenes that kind of showed it as, like, a breaking point or something. In the same way that they showed it in this movie in, like, a kind of a vision of the future of Sekigahara that Toranaga was describing to Yabushige in this show. In, like, I, Samurai, which was based on Musashi, they show it just kind of at the beginning as like, oh, the war's over, and now you see these stragglers trying to survive, and, you know, that coming out of this war. And that's how that movie starts, you know? And, but apparently they never depicted the actual, like, Battle of Sekigahara, like, fully until this, like, 2017 movie.
Oh, so interesting. Okay.
I just thought that was kind of interesting, too.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of tie-ins to Japanese history, a lot of fictionalized elements and stuff, a lot of different hands in the kitchen working on how they interpret the works, and they did the smart thing of presenting characters in a very kind of multi-dimensional way, that no character is 100% this or 100% that, you know? Ashida isn't 100% an asshole, even though he's kind of the guy that gets in the way of all the machinations and is kind of, you know, antagonistic in that sense. He's actually portrayed as kind of having his own goals and stuff and not necessarily being 100% evil and actually having some affection for certain other characters and stuff and having to deal with the politics and stuff that come into play when he's dealing with his Christian regents and stuff and having to kind of make peace with them and their demands.
Right.
Yabushiga, who is introduced at first by fucking melting somebody.
Right.
In boiling water and just being like a total psychopath. Again, he's just a very interesting character that's like multidimensional and has genuine affection for his nephew who he looks out for at the end of his life when he knows he's dying, when he knows he has to kill himself. He's still looking out for his nephew even though his nephew turned on him.
Right.
So there's like some genuine affection there as well, you know, like, and like I said, Toranaga let Blackbeard's concubine go, and as he said he would, he kept his word, which is something he could have refused to do and used that as a tool to kind of keep Blackthorn more in line, but he didn't. He let her go. So it's like all of these characters, they can be portrayed in multiple ways, and they can present themselves by showing you any one of their three hearts.
Mm-hmm.
But that is Shōgun. That is it for this week's podcast. Next week, we are going to be talking about Fallout, which is currently on Amazon Prime. So you can check that out there. It's an Amazon Prime original, and it is based on the video game franchise of the same name, but it's a interesting and unique story within that world. It's not like an adaptation of one of the games. It's a new piece within that franchise. And we'll be talking about that next week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, thank you everybody for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website and open up the container story for any of our podcast episodes and scroll down to the last paragraph, you'll find all of the relevant links to our SoundCloud page, our RSS feed, all of that stuff. It's all there. So check that out. You can also subscribe to this podcast through your favorite podcast client of choice like Apple Podcasts or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.